Hi everyone, welcome to the weekly SEO. Today I have two amazing guests instead of one. Despina and Liz are with us today, and I'm so excited to have them, and we have a really exciting topic to talk about. Welcome. How are you?
Hello. I think my connection is not the best.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you, Bishara, for inviting us and having us here.
Yes, also hi from my side, and thanks to everyone for tuning in today, and thanks Busra for making this happen, for having us here today. We're really, really happy and excited.
I'm excited. I'm excited too, and I love meeting new people, and this was a really good opportunity for me. And right now we are waiting for people to join us. So let's wait for a few seconds, then start. Everyone in the live stream, you can say hi. You can use the chat box to ask your questions about the presentation. We will try to answer them at the end of the presentation. You are so welcome to ask anything about page speed or web page test today. So how is Munich? Are you in Munich?
Yes, both located in Munich.
Exactly. And today, I haven't been out quite a lot, but it seems like a rather gray day. Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's different from your window.
Gray, coldish. I was wishing for sun and like beach and nice weather. I think that would be nice. But yeah, you cannot have everything, right?
Hi, Larissa, by the way.
Hello, Larissa.
So I saw different reels from about Germany. It's so cold, it's so dark. Is it really true?
It depends from where you're reporting from.
In Turkey, it's a normal, typical sunny day.
Oh, nice. But let's not complain. We in Munich are rather lucky. So we usually have a lot of sun.
Hi, Julia. Yes, sun. I love sun, as long as it's too hot. So if you want, we can start.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. So I'm sharing the presentation now.
Yes.
Do you see my screen and also already the next slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that looks good. So great, the test with the slides so far. So just a little presentation, perhaps from my side. Lisa Fellinger, Team Lead SEO from the Boutique Agency. It's a Munich-based agency, and we are specialized on SEA, SEO, and website usabilities. Also member of Women in Tech SEO. So fun facts about me, I'm an avid learner. I love learning languages, for the moment Portuguese. I play the piano and like much more activities in that direction. Learning is my thing. If I'm good at it, that is something else. But yeah, so far that's my passion. And I have a dog. I see the dog 2 times a week, and that's Hank, and you see him on the photos.
Yes, so also, hi from my side again to everyone. I'm Despina, I'm a Senior SEO Manager at the Boutique Agency. I've been active in SEO for around 6 years now, both in agencies, but also as an in-house SEO. And although I started more on the offsite side of things or by content SEO, I very quickly got very interested in technical SEO, and I'm super happy to learn more and more about it every day, which also explains then the next point. I'm also a member of the Women in Tech SEO community for already a couple of years now. So yeah, that's that about me. And when it comes to couple of fun facts. I really love getting the team together. Somehow it has happened that the last occasions involved a pub, whether it is a pub quiz or a pub karaoke, but yeah, that's one about me. And I also really love to travel like most of you do, I guess. Actually halfway through visiting the 7 wonders of the modern world. So if you've got any tips, I'm really happy to hear from you. With that being said, let's focus on what we will be covering today. We're speaking about how to optimize your website speed using webpagetest.org. In more details, first of all, we'll have a quick introduction about the tool and what advantages we find to it. Then we'll see the settings that we use when we run our tests. And then we'll see the KPIs that we focus on once we have our test results page, right? And also some common culprits that we have identified along the way. Last but not least, we'll have a very quick look at performance budgets and how we can connect this data along with web page test data in order to create some specifications for our files when we're deciding about how fast we want our page to be. And to start, we all know that time is of the essence. And when we're saying time, we mean speed. We know that more and more people are browsing the internet with their mobile phone and many times don't have an optimal connection. We also know that Core Web Vitals are for quite a while now an important ranking factor for Google. And the list of arguments goes on and on. Here we've listed but a few. But long story short, we really need to focus on how fast our pages are and if they're really delivering, if they're lean and fast enough to meet the current user needs. However, if we look at the average size of a page and how it has been evolving over time, we'll quickly notice that pages are actually getting heavier and heavier, which also probably makes them load slower. That means that since we know the pages have a tendency to get bigger, we just need to be smarter about how we implement the different elements on our page in order to still keep them optimized for speed. And we need a tool stack for that. Here is where Web Page Test Org comes into play. Of course, there is also a lot of other tools out there, but today we will be covering Web Page Test. You probably already heard of the tool. You might be using it to a smaller or bigger extent also yourselves in your daily life. Just a quick side note, we're not affiliated in any way, but that's a tool that we prefer over some others because it comes with certain advantages. First of all, it can be to a very big extent tailored to our needs. That means we can simulate different connections, mobile or desktop browsers, location, to just fit the use case that we always want to test for. And then it also creates a lot of insights. Just going through a results page, you will see different sub-reports focusing on Core Web Vitals, on the security of your page, on even the cost of your data. And on top of those insights, you also get some actionable points on what you can actually do to fix your KPIs for speed. Another possibility that you've got with Web Page Test is that you can store your test results. And that's for up to 12 months with a free account. And if you want to go beyond this time frame and still have the free account, you can also export it as JSON data. Last but not least, the rather new function that we saw with Web Page Test is that you can go beyond analyzing single pages, but rather work with user journeys, including a lot of pages along the way. Now, as I said, it's a pretty new feature. We haven't played too much with it, but from the little we've seen, we think that it's a pretty powerful option to have. But still, a couple of things to keep in mind when we're working with Web Page Test. It remains lab data, right? We just talked about it. It's simulated data. It's not the real data from our actual users that are coming to our website. So we would always invite you to have a second look at that data too. And second of all, of course, it generates a lot of insights, but just running a couple of tests on a web page test and deriving or basing your entire speed strategy on those pages would not be enough. What we tend to do within the team is to actually break a domain down into different page templates, then investigate at least a couple of pages within each page template, and also have a look at our competition. As an internal benchmark, we've basically set ourselves the goal to be 20% faster than our fastest competitor. And if we happen to be the fastest one, still we keep this 20% as a benchmark to just anticipate any of our competitors currently working on their speed and using us as a benchmark. Now, before we get to the actual test results, how does one go about setting the test up? First and foremost, we need to provide the URL that we want to investigate. Now, as we've said before, we can also work with user journeys, but today we'll be focusing on the URL level analysis. And in this example, we're analyzing a page that got quite a lot of traction this summer. It was the European Championships page, and it was basically an event that took place here in Munich in August 2022. So there was quite some traffic on this page. When we check the first tab of settings, here's where we'll set our location, browser, and connection that we want to simulate, as well as the number of tests that we want to run. Keep in mind, each test will take some more time until we get then our test results, right? But we usually still decide to go for 3 tests. And that is because we want to have statistically important results. If, for example, we were running only 1 test on our page, then that might not necessarily be very representative. Let's assume that, for example, when we're running the test, the server of the website was for whatever reason overloaded. So then we won't really see the real picture. That's why we decide to go with 3 tests every time. Then we click first and repeat view. We do that because we want to see what the experience will be like, not just for a first-time user, but also for a returning one. And that also allows us to see how we're optimizing our cache policy. Last but not least, we click on Capture Video. That is because that allows us to get a GIF or video file of what the page looks like when it is loading, along with a little label below. That is a very good visual aid for us if we want to prioritize that and speak to stakeholders that are not necessarily very technical. This way they can actually see what is the experience of my user while the seconds go on, and that might help us to better prioritize our speed-related tasks. As a next step, we click Save Response Bodies. And that is because this way we have the chance to get a preview of each of the files in our detailed report or waterfall chart that will follow. And in the next, we can see what a waterfall chart looks like. Now, here we see all of our elements, and if I click on any of the elements by hitting the Object tab, I can get a preview of what my element looks like. If we had not clicked on Save Response Bodies, we would not be able to get the preview of the file, but rather only its location and not see to which exact image that would correspond. And then we come to the last settings, which are capturing the Lighthouse Report, which is basically then allowing web page tests to run the Lighthouse Report and have it available to us as a sub-report via the tool. Emulating the mobile browser, here we go with Motorola G, as it's the one that Google also uses in its simulations, and capturing the DevTools timeline. Again, then that will allow us to have a look at the processing data from the tool directly if we want to do so. We click on Start Test, and after a while, we'll get our results page. Now, before we go there, there's a lot of information in the report that you will see. But let's have a very quick overview of the most important features that we see in this report. In the beginning, let me see. In the beginning, you will see, first of all, the different reports that are available to you. And by definition, we're landing on the summary report. Next, you will get to see a performance summary, along with the biggest issues and opportunities. And then the different observed KPIs for first-time and for returning users. Now, if you notice the small parenthesis on the side next to your runs, you will see which was the most representative version of the 3 tests that we run in our case. By clicking on it, you're taken to these details of the corresponding test. And by clicking on that, you see, first of all, the real user measurements, and then the waterfall chart. Now, side note on the real user measurements that we get in the detail level. This data here is coming from Google's Chrome User Experience Report, but we would still invite you to check with your Page Speed Insights report to be sure. And why is that? The data that you see here, sometimes when you don't have enough visitors or enough traffic on a page, you might get the domain level data here instead of the page one. So how can I know? Here in this report, it's not very, very clear. So what we typically do is to run a Page Speed Insights test for our page, and then we get to see if we get different data for our page or for our domain. You can see it by switching between this URL and origin. If you see that you have origin level data, that means that basically the data you got in your web page test is coming from the domain level. So it might not necessarily be very representative of the page that we're analyzing at the moment. So now that we have set our test up and we have a rough overview of what the results page looks like, we can move on to check what focus KPIs we look at when we are checking our test results. Here, a very quick note. Apparently, we cannot go through all of the KPIs, so we're focusing on a couple of speed KPIs for the sake of time. We have organized them by where the optimization takes place. And here, two disclaimers before we start. First of all, you will see in the following slides a timeline always. This is based on the test we just run on the European Championships page. But sometimes the issues or the print screens that you might see are coming from different use cases or different issues that we identified with other websites along the way. And also, as we said before, there's a lot of other stuff that can go wrong with the page and lead to bad performance. Here, we're just summarizing the ones that we see quite often. With that being said, I will guide you through the first section, server and browser communication, and then my colleague Lisa is going to take over for the rest. So when it comes to server and browser communication, the KPI that we want to focus on is time to first byte. Time to first byte measures how responsive our server is. And it is basically the time between my browser requesting a page and the time that it gets the first byte of information from the server. A good time to first byte is anything under 800 milliseconds, while anything above 1,800 milliseconds is considered a bad time to first byte. One common culprit that we have identified is the DNS lookup and how long that takes. And you can see that this is the case here as well. An ideal DNS lookup, that's the first kind of blue line that we see here in the waterfall chart, would take around 150 milliseconds, which we are here exceeding by more than double. Now, what can cause a long DNS lookup? That might have to do with the absence of a CDN, with our settings on how long we want the DNS lookup to be cached or our TTL, but also it might just have to do with our provider. Let's take the example of GoDaddy, for example, which is a free provider, then their DNS lookup times are pretty long. Another common issue that we have identified with regards to time to first byte is the Ssl Certificate Negotiation and how much this one takes. An ideal SSL negotiation is anything between 250 and 500 milliseconds. So as you see here, in our example, we're passing the test just fine. However, not all the pages have such an optimized setup. And it has to do with the kind of SSL certificate that the pages have implemented or the website has implemented. There's three types of SSL certificates. We've got domain validation, organization, and extended validation. Extended being, simply put, the safest, but also the most complicated one. So that's the one that typically would take longer to load. That's, for example, a certification that banks use quite often. Let's have a look at the next slide on what the impact of an extended validation certificate will look like. In the graph above, we still see the European Championships page, which is doing just fine. It has a very legitimate SSL negotiation time. Now, if we take the example below from DigiCert, they are using extended validation SSL certificate. So when we see the second line, during the SSL negotiation phase, that's the purple part of the line that you see there, we have Chrome that is coming and firing another request to OCSP just to ensure that the certificate can still be trusted. That, if you check the first line, is creating us another 573 milliseconds extra on top of the 200 that we have already spent from the initial SSL negotiation. And that leads to 755 milliseconds in total. Now, knowing that a good time to first byte is just 45 milliseconds away, such a long SSL negotiation is not ideal. Just a very quick side note on that one. We just recently read that for any version of Chrome 106 and afterwards, this in-between step, so this double check, let's say, from Chrome will not be taking place. But most likely, it's not the case for the rest of the browser. So you might want to bring this as a point or a question or a thing to check for your speed. The last culprit that has to do with our time to first byte is any possible redirects. And here the test that we run was on the Apple website. We basically run a first test typing in the correct homepage link, so apple.com, and then we got a first byte of 0.6 seconds. Then, instead of typing the correct link, we rather typed apple.co, and then we got a first byte of 1.8 seconds. Why would a redirect cost us so much time? That is because every time that we've got a redirect taking place, there's a new DNS lookup, a TCP connection, and maybe an SSL negotiation taking place from scratch. And all of this keeps on adding up until we reach our final destination page. And in this example, you see that we're actually losing time twice, because the .co page will redirect first to the HTTP version of the .com page, and then to the HTTPS. So all in all, we end up with 2 DNS lookups. We've got 3 TCP connections and 2 SSL negotiations. And that's a big overhead that we have created, and that results to poor timed first byte. So yeah, that's that from my side regarding server and browser communication. For the next steps, Lisa is going to take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Despina. So as Despina mentioned, we're now going from the front part of our web page load to the head of the page, and we're having a look at that one. And speaking of the head, we're in the first contentful paint area. You can see first contentful paint in our screenshot. It's the light green line. And everything which lies in the first, or which happens until the first contentful paint happens, lies in the head of the page. That's why we're having a look here. So what is a good first contentful paint? A good first contentful paint is at about 1.8 seconds. And we're here in our Munich European Championship side at 2.4 seconds. That means we're not largely, I mean, everything can be extended, but we're over it. So this gives us the hint to have a look here at what we can improve. And things which can be improved in the head of the page are its most important files, like CSS files, JavaScript files. And these are actually, and that's our most common culprit here, render blocking. Render blocking per se is not the main issue here, or not the main problem in general, but it depends on how many files are actually causing a render blocking. So you can see in this example here that 16 files are causing that, and that adds a lot of time to it, right? So what to do? The first thing to go to is to have a check in the developer tools. I guess some of you might know this hint, and just check of how much actually is used of these files. So we checked here a home page, and we can see, for example, in the red underlined area that on our CSS file, 90% are actually not used. Only 10% are used. So this is something we can take to our developers to have a talk with. But keep one thing in mind, that is, this appears for the page we tested. It might not be the case for other pages where this CSS is also implemented. So talking about an example, they may use the same CSS file also for their product pages, and then, of course, more CSS might be used. So saying for this page type, 90% of CSS is not being used, take this with the developer or talk with the developer about it, saying, can we, for the home page at least, implement a shorter version of our CSS, inline CSS, or organize it in a different way? We need to keep it short, unfortunately, so we're going ahead to our browser main thread. And browser main thread makes us talk about largest contentful paint, our Google Core Web Vitals. So this is about painting the page. It's about the largest content, an image, a video, or whatsoever. And of course, the first thing we see, our largest contentful paint has a value which is horrifying. It's at 38 seconds. And the first thing to use web page test for is to go into the details section and check out actually what we have here. And for example, you can see that there are 311 in the size section. There are 311 bytes of our image. And if you look at the uncompressed size, you see these are also 311 bytes or kilobytes. And actually the difference between the two numbers is nothing. So that's the first thing to do. We could compress the images. So you can always do something about the images, be it like checking for the file format, a JPEG to a PNG, or also compress them, go to tiny PNG, just throw all the largest contentful images, or which appear, we come later to that, to be largest contentful images into that, or images in general, and compress them and make them easier to digest for the website. Also, you can have, or you have a special section and web page test, that's the full largest contentful paint event information. And there is an interesting hint. For example, you can see in this example that on the header image, on the hero image, lazy load is being used. That's a hint you can read here. And that's also a common culprit. Lazy load is like brilliant to use. It's therefore like only loading the images when they're in the viewport area of the user, and so not making the browser load everything right on time. But it might not be the right thing to do when for the largest contentful paint image. So you might say, but lazy load is only for the ones which are not in the viewport area. The hero image is in the viewport area, so it recognizes that the technology. That's true, the technology might recognize it, but it needs time to process, like to process of where am I and am I in the viewport area? And that time of processing is actually causing a lazy load on a hero image to load slower. So that is not a good thing to do, to implement lazy load on hero images or largest contentful paint images. One thing to keep in mind here is your largest contentful paint can vary from depending on the tool you're looking at. So web page test gives you another hint on the largest contentful paint than Page Speed Insight might give you. What to do? What we're doing is actually regarding or considering everything which is declared as largest contentful paint and optimizing on that. Also, we are going to test on our own devices, let it be desktop or mobile phone, to see what we consider being the largest contentful paint image. But it's always good to optimize your images and then special optimize your largest contentful paint. So we've been seeing with Despina a lot of focus points here. We've seen the first byte, the first contentful paint, the largest contentful paint, and at the end, we also keep in mind the document complete time. When you start with web page test, you have this timeline. We have highlighted it here for you. But basically, you have a large timeline with numbers and you think, where the hell should I start now? And so, yes, we chose already focus points depending on where on the website are sitting actually our optimization points. But also, if we regard everything in a relationship, it helps us to prioritize. So you can see the time which passes between first byte and first contentful paints are 1.1 seconds. And so on, you see the time difference. We've highlighted them here. And let's say we are working in an agency, we get a web project and they ask us, how long will it take to do your analysis? Or you're working in-house in a company and like they ask, how long are you going to do and to work on this? And then you can like have a look just on these numbers, calculate the difference in between them and make a decision on where to start working. So largest contentful paint is a web vital, so we need like to core focus it a bit. But then also like the time difference from first contentful paint to largest contentful paint is enormous in this case. Means most of the time in our analysis has to go into this, as our main goal is to push largest contentful paint farther ahead. And also first byte to first contentful paint time is not ideal, as we already saw to recommendation. We're a little bit over it. We have to do the second prioritization on that part. And then the whole rest of it is going farther ahead. So that's like, if we have time over, we can have a look here, but it's not our main focus. So that helps us. Now, from deep diving in web page test, going out to performance budgets. So what are performance budgets? Like, first of all, to all be on the same page, these are budgets your actual data files or data types have. For example, your HTML file has 200,000 bytes. That's your current performance budget. So just being said. And now, what would be like, if you go or tackle performance budget, what would be actually a good performance budget? For this, we have the help of a website called Performance Budget IO. There is the performance budget calculator, and we can just have a quick look on what actually a good performance budget is. You go to the website, you enter then how long you would like to load your website on what device, and it calculates you an ideal performance budget. You can then play around with the data types, CSS, JavaScript, and you get like time values out of that. So now with this, you have the idea of what actually good performance budget is like. And then you go back to web page test. That's why web page test is very useful. You go in the content breakdown report and you have a look at your requests. So we focus now on the left side of our presentation. We see the number of requests, and we can see here, for example, images, 91 requests, other 59, JavaScript, 29 requests. And this means these requests are the ones we can, for our performance budget, prioritize, because these are the highest ones, like the heaviest ones. We want to help our website load faster with these ones. Other is actually third-party requests in that case. Then we have a look at the bytes our website uses for these requests. So images, we can see 5 million bytes. Video, 4 million bytes. So video comes in, so it's also pretty heavy. And these are our actual current budgets. We compare them from web page test with what an ideal budget would look like, and then we can go into depression because, like, let's just compare it here for a short time. In JavaScript, we have 817,000 bytes. Now that's our budget on this example. And the budget here we ideally calculated is at 31 kilobyte. Let's make a quick conversion, bytes to kilobytes. That would be 817 kilobytes we are now, and we have to go to 30 kilobytes. Just imagine now you talk with the developer. In 6 months, we're going to have JavaScript files in a complete size of 31 kilobytes. And then imagine the project of, yes, sure, we're going to do that. So that's quite hard, and that's my point being here. Your objective should not be the ideal performance budget, but as Despina already mentioned, just look at your current state and make your first objective being 20% better than what you are now. Then you can look at your competitor and you Google the keyword for which the page is ranking, you look at your current performance budget, then you look at your competitor and you say, okay, after 6 months, we want to be 20% better than them, etc., etc. That would be a strategy to address performance budgets. That is something how this could look like, actually. So that's the tracking of performance budgets. You have here, you can see here each data type, they have different colors. And then through the months, we were writing down for every data type the current performance budget. And that is how it goes. So at the beginning, we get at the first section, the first week, I think we did it on a weekly base, we went better, then it went worse, then we went better again, etc., etc. So optimizing something might not always be a line down, but also like going up and down in waves. Currently, it should be our objective, of course, to be better at the end and have a good performance budget. So that's all so far, folks, but keep in mind, like, it's a huge resource. We're just giving a quick overview about it, and there are brilliant resources in the internet, like Twitch channels about web page test, or the blog, or the documentation. Have a read into it. There are also a lot of videos about it, and yes, now we're happy to hear your questions.
That was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Lisa and Despina. And it was really insightful for me and for the new beginners, I think. Actually, I have a question about it. Core Web Vitals, it's so hard to implement Core Web Vitals tasks in terms of development teams. So how should we communicate with developers in terms of Core Web Vitals?
You go for it, Despina.
I can go for it. Now, I think that actually web page test is a very cool tool in the sense that it helps you to better also translate the core web vitals that we as SEOs tend to focus on a little bit more you get the more technical approach to it, and then you can explain to the developer exactly what we need. We don't say, okay, here is my cumulative layout shift, make it smaller, but rather we understand what causes those shifts, and then we can give them better and more actionable points to do and how they can tackle it. Another thing that Lisa said before that we always also need to take into consideration is that they also have just some certain capacities. They don't have all the time in the world, and obviously another bunch of tasks that are coming from other departments. So we need to be also strategic about what we ask and what other implications it might have. I could probably not come and say, okay, as Lisa said, we've got one main CSS file implemented in all of our pages. I cannot come and say, in this instance of this page, this is getting only 50% used. Please kill the rest 50%, because that would just not make sense. And just for them to sit down and create the CSS file and split it in what CSS elements are needed for each of the pages, that would still be quite time consuming. So we need to be strategic, we need to also be realistic and to try and understand them, and also formulate things in a way that they will be able to understand easier. And I think that then we can get the buy-in from developers a lot easier and work more harmoniously together.
Actually, Brenda is asking, do you have a developer successfully implemented JavaScript things,
Yes.
It's the hardest part, actually.
It is. Yeah, we had, it was like the first priority in our whole optimization progress. But of course, because of the work behind that, it was the last one we get engaged with. They did. Because they saw it, we cannot get any faster, we cannot get any lighter. We need now to address the JavaScript files. And what they did successfully was but they needed to look down on the code. They were looking, splitting up the JavaScript files first of that, and then they were putting different loading issues on it, like asynchronous loading, the further loading. But they needed first to really look at that and to make a decision, and they were not happy with it. So cookies might be the right thing.
In our cases, actually, Adem here, one of my teammates here, asking a question. I will come to that in a few seconds. At our point, one of our clients couldn't decide which JavaScript file is important for them or not, and Adam asked them to create a testing environment and just for all of the JavaScript files while trying to load the web page. And at that point, they can understand which files are important and which are not. That's how we can implement the page speed stuff there and created a case study. But it's hard to proceed them. Actually, I then have another question here. Do you think web page tests should improve the insights it gives for the CLS metric? Maybe he's asking it because most of the time we have problems with the CLS metric in Turkey. That's why I guess he's asking it.
Okay, that's actually an excellent question. I mean, from the experience that we've had, the reports we get on cumulative layout shift also fall quite well when we compare them to I'm stuck, but basically to the developer tools in Chrome. So when I'm checking, okay, when did we have actual CLS instances versus what I got in web page test, it seems to be pretty standing and being exactly the same. But I don't know, Lisa, if you've seen any differences in the data between the two.
No, I think we should use a mix between the tools, of course. You get the cumulative layout shift in a video view, of course. That's where you then go down and look at it more specifically. Then you go use page speed insights and have then ideas about it. Then you test, and yeah, I would say until now that's the only approach we can go.
Yeah, cross-checking the metrics is the best way to implement, I guess, or prioritize tests. I hate this keyword, by the way. So we have another comment here, actually, and I totally agree with it. I think CMSs should automatically compress the file size of the images in the slider section, because no matter how optimized the design is, people use design upload images with high file sizes. I totally agree with this, because most of the time people with no SEO knowledge or performance marketing knowledge tend to use the CMS profile, CMS section, and it can be a problem. Did you have any customers like that?
Yeah, I think, as mentioned, I think the commentary also says it. There are some CMSs which already do it automatically, but like most of them not. And as soon as you like let the hand on manual upload, then there will always be the problem. Like even people were considering a guideline of how to upload images, but if there is someone new to image compression, they don't really know what it is. And even though I think everyone can rely also on that, people tend to say, we have compressed images. And then you put them to tiny PNG and you see, hey, there's more music in it. You could actually compress them even more. So I think image compression is like a never-ending story. You could always do something about that.
Yeah,
Once
exactly.
I have a client edit 50 megabytes file size in the file on the homepage. Yeah, it was really fantastic. But it's not the hero image, the main image, CLS image, and not CMS, SCP image, by the way. It was just a small section at the down of the homepage, and it was 50 megabytes.
Oh.
Nice. I hope the visual was nice, though.
That's the truth. I mean, it's usually done with very good intentions. People think we're going to have a very good image, very nice quality. And yeah, somehow you can do with a lot less kilobytes and then still have a pretty good result.
Yeah, I know. Most of the time designers do that because they want high quality pictures on the website too, but we should have a metric to compress them actually. So I guess we don't have any other questions right now. And in my opinion, it was a really insightful presentation. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we will share the deck together with the YouTube video. You can find the deck at the description section of this YouTube video. And thank you so much for having you here. And thank you so much for the questions Brenda and Adam asked and everyone watched. And have a nice weekend, everyone.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Nice weekend, guys. Bye-bye.